Disclaimer, this is a very Japanese franchise, and being such, that means that there are a pretty large number of games that were not released outside of Japan. So for the sake of convenience, I will mainly be covering the franchise as it was released in North America, and then I will briefly cover what was not released outside of Japan and Europe. Also, today's video will feature my friend Chase Face Show as a co-host, so say hi, Chase.
Hey Ryder, thanks for having me. You're paying me for this later, right?
Awesome, so thank you, and let's get on with the video.
Okay, cool. Just had to check.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Brief History. Today's episode, Ape Escape. Ready, set, go!
May 31st, 1999. With the game industry nearing the end of its 5th generation of consoles, the once revolutionary PlayStation was already on its way to becoming a relic of an era gone by. From 3D platformers to rhythm games to adventure and survival horror, it seemed like there wasn't much more that could be done on the original PlayStation. And it was at this time, on May 31st, 1999, that Sony Computer Entertainment released arguably one of the most unique games on the PS1, Ape Escape.
In this game, we find an albino monkey named Spectre at a theme park creatively named Monkey Park. Spectre somehow stumbles upon a special peak points helmet that exponentially enhances his intelligence, turning him into an evil genius bent on world domination. Whereupon he then gives every monkey in the park one of these helmets and lets them all run loose. The monkeys soon storm a local laboratory which houses, of all things, a time machine, and you can probably guess what happened after that. It is now your job to take the role of a young boy named Spike and travel through time, capturing the escaped monkeys in order to save history.
And while this plot was unique enough in itself, what was really unorthodox in Ape Escape was its controls. At the time of its release, Ape Escape was pushed as being the first PS1 game ever to only be playable using the PlayStation DualShock controller. That's a mouthful. And it greatly lived up to this claim. To call this game's controls unconventional would be a massive understatement. The left analog stick lets you move, and you pause with the start button. In terms of standard controls, that's about as far as this game goes.
The camera was controlled via the L1 button and the D-pad, and the X, O, square, and triangle buttons, which are usually used for jumping and attacking, in Ape Escape are used to equip items such as a stun club, time net, and a monkey radar. These gadgets can then be used via the right analog stick, leaving the jump button to be the R1 shoulder button, and those are just the basics. So you have a uniquely simple but charming story, and perhaps one of the strangest control schemes in gaming history. Mix all of this with a nice sugary Japanese glaze, and you have one of the weirdest games of the late 1990s, but also one of the more well-received, scoring 9 out of 10s across the board. And of course, with critical success, sequels are inevitable, but outside of Japan, the next game wouldn't be seen for another 4 years. What the Japanese got in 2001, North America wouldn't get until June 30th, 2003. But luckily, Sony Computer Entertainment's Japan studio, with the help of Ubisoft, delivered exactly what their fans wanted in Ape Escape 2 for the PlayStation 2. But what exactly did this sequel do differently?
Well, not very much, honestly. Aside from the obvious graphical enhancements made possible by the PlayStation 2, Ape Escape 2 was pretty much just more of what was already established in the original Ape Escape, albeit with a new main character named Jimmy. The main gameplay change was the introduction of boss battles, a genre staple that was oddly missing from the first game. And while a couple new gameplay mechanics popped up every now and then, such as controlling a giant mech suit, some new gadgets, and a baby monkey sidekick named Pipachi who occasionally helped the player out, Ape Escape 2 as a whole was essentially just more of the original Ape Escape. Also, the main characters Jimmy and Natalie were voiced by Veronica Taylor and Rachel Lillis, more commonly known as Ash and Misty from the original Pokemon cartoon. And this is literally the best reason to play this game.
Natalie! I sent the professor's stuff okay! Jimmy! What are you doing? You've gone over the weight limit! Don't worry, the stuff went through fine!
I'm sorry you get really excited about that part.
But even though not much was changed for this sequel, it was still incredibly well received, scoring anywhere from 8 to 9 out of 10 from various fans and critics alike. So by this point, the Ape Escape series had 2 critically acclaimed games under its belt, helping to solidify the franchise's place in the PlayStation's lineup of exclusives. And following the release of Ape Escape 2, Sony decided it was time to branch the series out by introducing the first ever Ape Escape spin-off game, Ape Escape Pumped & Primed.
Released for the PlayStation 2 on October 20th, 2004, Pumped & Primed was a multiplayer party game inspired by the likes of Mario Party and Sonic Shuffle, in which 1 to 4 players would compete in various mini-games such as stunt club battles and obstacle courses, in the hopes of winning a tech tournament. For some reason. Review scores for Pumped & Primed were mostly an average 60%, with most criticism being that there was nothing stand out about the game, making it simply okay. And it's true, I played it. It wasn't very good.
And unfortunately, the story was pretty much the same for the next game in the series, Ape Escape on the Loose, a PlayStation portable remake of the original Ape Escape released on March 22nd, 2005. This PSP launch title featured enhanced graphics, a new multiplayer mode, and a completely re-recorded English dub with new voice actors, including the incredible Richard Horvitz as Spike. Me! Zim is me! Zim is me!
But the biggest change for On the Loose were the game's controls. Due to the PSP's lack of a second analog stick, the controls for Ape Escape had to be completely revamped. You still assign gadgets to certain buttons, but instead of using those items via the right analog stick, on the PSP, you use them simply by pressing the assigned button. In addition to this, jumping was now mapped to the more traditional X button, which meant you could only equip 3 gadgets at a time, unlike the PS1 original, where you could equip up to 4. These changes meant that Ape Escape veterans had to completely relearn how to play this already bizarrely controlled game.
And unfortunately, this less intuitive control scheme became a major point of criticism upon the game's release, landing Ape Escape on the Loose mostly mixed to average reviews. However, it could easily be said that these were simply spin-off games, and unless you happen to be a certain red-clad plumber, virtually no franchise's spin-offs are ever as successful as its main series games. And speaking of the main series, on January 17th, 2006, our favorite Simian series saw 2 new releases, the first being Ape Escape Academy for the PSP, another party game spin-off, and the second being the long-awaited sequel to Ape Escape 2, creatively titled Ape Escape 3.
The second game in the core series to be released for PS2, Ape Escape 3 kept with the traditions of its predecessor, but found ways to switch up the formula in ways that Ape Escape 2 didn't, starting with the story. Once again, Spectre is back with a new plan to rule the world, but this time around he seems to be running out of ideas. His plans for world domination now involve hijacking television to put the human race into a lazy, trance-like state. And I don't have a problem, I can quit reality TV anytime I want.
And unfortunately, Spectre's mind-numbing programs have rendered almost the entire cast of Ape Escape 1 and 2 completely useless, meaning we now have a whole new cast of characters. This cast included 2 playable characters, Kei and Yumi, and their Aunt Aki, who helps and instructs our heroes throughout their adventure. At the start of the game, the player chooses their character and sets off to capture an abundance of monkeys throughout a series of levels inspired by various different genres of television shows.
In addition to a new character roster and a slight change in setting, the game made a couple new gameplay changes that helped spice up the game as a whole. The biggest new addition was the introduction of morphing, which allowed our 2 protagonists to transform into powerful suits, which granted them more abilities and strength. The second, but slightly less significant gameplay twist was that this time around the monkeys were smart enough to try and steal the player's stun club and time net, and if a monkey steals your net and catches you with it, you'll be transported out of the level and sent back to the main hub area. A small change that could occasionally turn the entire game on its head. That's harsh.
But even with this game's new additions and tweaks to the formula, Ape Escape 3 still remained in line with what was established and solidified in Ape Escape 2 and was received generally well. Ow, my hand. Ow, the mic. Oh god, everything's going wrong! And unfortunately, this marks the end for the core Ape Escape series up to this point. Following the release of Ape Escape 3, the most us North Americans have seen are Ape Quest, a 2008 RPG spin-off for the PSP, and 2010's motion-based on-rail shooter PlayStation Move Ape Escape, meaning that we have not seen a true Ape Escape game in nearly a decade.
However, as was stated previously, the Ape Escape franchise has seen a much longer lifespan in its native country of Japan, with a myriad of games never exceeding the Japanese market. These include Ape Escape 2001 for PS2, 2006's Ape Escape Million Monkeys and Ape Escape Racing for PS2 and PSP respectively, and Ape Escape Saru Saru Big Mission, released for PSP in July 2007. In addition to these games, there were also a couple Ape Escape spin-offs that did see European and Australian releases after being published in Japan, these being 2004's iToy Monkey Mania and 2005's Ape Academy 2.
Ape Escape was perhaps one of the most unique franchises of its respective generations. With its bizarre and unrivaled control scheme, lovable characters, and addictive gameplay, Ape Escape is truly a one-of-a-kind franchise. There really was nothing like it at the time, and there hasn't been to this day. And its cult popularity has gone on to inspire an anime and manga series as well as 2 different series of animated shorts. However, with a nearly 10-year-long absence and no signs of a new installment, it does not seem very likely that we'll see a new entry into the core Ape Escape franchise anytime soon, if at all.
But in the end, even if we never see a new Ape Escape title again, that doesn't change the fact that the series was a colorful and charming experience that was created for the sole purpose of being incredibly fun. And just as Ryder said about the Kirby franchise over a year ago, sometimes all you need to make a great video game franchise is pure fun. Thanks for watching, guys. DFTBA. Hey guys, I'm Chaseface. Big thanks to Ryder and my buddies at Game Theory for letting me make an appearance on this episode. I'm an enormous fan of the Ape Escape series, so this was super fun to be a part of. If you want to check out my stuff, feel free to click the annotation or the link in the description to find my channel, where I make long-form analysis videos of game franchises, one game at a time, to try and understand why the series fell out of grace. I call it the What Happened format, and I'm currently working on Sonic the Hedgehog and Pokemon. I'll eventually get to Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, and so on, so I'd love to have you along for the ride. And if you don't, then I'll spread nasty rumors about you, and if you try to talk to me in the cafeteria, I'll act all nice to your face, but my friends and I will laugh about you behind your back. Yeah, that's what you get.
But luckily, Sony Computer Entertainment's Japan studio, with the help of Ubisoft, delivered exactly what their fans wanted in Ape Escape 2 for the PlayStation 2. There's a little bit of a voice crack in there. I'm like freaking 19. I shouldn't be voice cracking. Puberty's done for me.